What is up, guys? We are here for a special drop-in show to talk about the massive news that broke yesterday regarding Cody and Brandi Rhodes and their status with AEW going forward. I do plan to do a show covering a few outside of the ring topics and a preview for the Elimination Chamber PLE, which I was planning on doing tonight, but with everything pretty much dropping in the wrestling universe kind of going in influx yesterday with the news that broke. I figured this is a little bit more pressing and more time sensitive to kind of address now. And even with waiting almost 24 hours now, it's insane to see all the news that's piling in and all the speculation and a lot of, well, I'm not gonna say a lot, but some people are saying, that, what if it's a work and all this. So I'm just gonna get right into this, and with that being said, I'll do a separate show later on at some point to cover Elimination Chamber and a few other things like, oh, I don't know, Stone Cold Steve Austin possibly coming back. That's like, it's insane to think that news broke almost, what was it, maybe the day before, I think, the whole Cody Rhodes bomb dropped. Or something like that. I'm not sure the exact timeline, but it was definitely before Cody. And now that's almost like a second thought, which is insane because this is Stone Cold Steve Austin. And if that is even a possibility and a true speculation, and if there's any merit to that rumor, then that would be almost mind blowing in and of itself. And to think we have that going on, and then everything that just dropped yesterday, this, what a 48 hours, 72 hours, guys. But like I said, we're just going to get straight into it here now with Cody and Brandi Rhodes. And if you've been living under a rock or you aren't on social media or if you've been avoiding it, and by the way, if you have, kudos to you. I am trying to get more like you. But with that being said, if you have not heard the specific news regarding Cody and Brandi Rhodes, then of course it has been confirmed with AEW releasing a official statement as well that Cody and Brandi Rhodes are no longer with AEW. Apparently, Tony Khan and the Rhodes, I'm just going to kind of reference probably Cody mainly, and that's no disrespect to Brandi, but a lot of the speculation and a lot of the news going around is related to Cody specifically. So that's most likely and why I will be referencing him specifically or more so than Brandi. But essentially, in being a married couple, it's not surprising where one goes, the other will follow, and not to be in a demeaning way or anything like that. It's just facts, you know what I mean? And it, not for nothing, it makes sense and it makes life easier. So with that being said, I will read here in a second the official statement from AEW, but first, for me personally, it sucks, like I was actually sad once I jumped on Twitter and saw everything that was going on. I was actually really sad to think about all the stuff we're not going to get now with Cody being in AEW. I think there was obviously so much left on the table. Like we could literally do a whole show just on the possibilities and all the matchups and stories that could have happened with Cody, going forward in AEW. And for me personally, I was looking forward to a Cody and CM Punk feud, regardless of who was the face and the heel in that situation. I think that would have been so much fun to play off of their history and similarities and differences and things like that, and just see what that match could have looked like itself. So that's one of the things. And the new guys, Adam Cole, and that whole story with the Bullet Club, quote unquote Bullet Club, the Elite, playing out, and just everything. It's sad, and to see if he were to ever go back and restart his feud with MJF, or just if he would even actually face off for the championship. The stipulation that he had made in one of his matches, I believe it was going against Jericho. Or was it MJF, rather? I can't pinpoint who his exact opponent was on that, but when he had made the stipulation that if he didn't win the match, he wouldn't challenge for the AEW championship ever going forward. And that's why he mainly focused after that, because obviously he didn't win. But after that, that's why his primary focus was on the TNT championship, and really establishing that and not having it viewed as a secondary title, even though it technically is, but in the sense that you still have main event stars that are gunning for it, and to show the importance of it, and to really place value on it. And I think he truly did that, and he deserves so much credit for establishing that title itself. So to think of everything we're gonna be missing out on, it's kind of sad, But in outside of what we see on TV, Cody was a big part of AEW and especially their community outreach. When he kind of, I don't want to say gave up on Twitter, but just kind of was done with Twitter and was fed up with it, is probably a better term, and just focused more on if he needed to use social media, posting whatever on Instagram. But he had given his account, which I think has maybe like 1 million or over 1 million followers. He gave that account over to the community outreach team and rebranded it with their proper logo and information and everything like that. So, and that's just one thing, and everything that I've seen wrestler-wise who have commented on Twitter so far, it's been nothing but positive. And I think that truly says, and of course we haven't heard from everyone, and everyone has their differences at certain points, but all the love that's poured in from a lot of people from AEW and a lot of wrestlers from AEW to Cody and Brandy, it's refreshing, and it's very cool to see, but it's also kind of sad too, and the reports that are coming out are saying the main reason that, or the obvious reasons that they couldn't come to terms on a new agreement or an extension or anything like that is because of two main reasons, and one of them being money, which, isn't really surprising because everyone wants more money, right? You want what you want, especially if and I'm not sure if him being an EVP, if he would have had access to knowing specifically what other wrestlers would be making on their contracts. I'm not sure if he would be privy to that information or if that was just like a Tony Khan and obviously like the accounting department. But if he did, and for instance, like he knew what like a CM Punk was getting, or Bryan Danielson was getting, I wonder if that had anything to do with it as well. But that's just me pondering and speculating on that, or at least that aspect of the money feature. But again, without really knowing how much he was making and how much he was asking for, you can't really validate one way or another, or be like, yeah, fuck yeah, you should have fought for more money, like, or like, no, like, dude, like, you're not worth that much. You can't really speculate, like, so I'll just not really go much further into that. But the other part that I thought was pretty interesting was the fact that there was reports, of course, that he was essentially losing all of his creative control and booking power that he once had with having that role. I believe it's been the past year that Tony Khan has essentially taken the reins for AEW and really completely taken over creative and booking and everything that we see on TV and the planning and all that good stuff. Whereas the beginning of AEW, it was said that the EVPs shared power with that, and once specific episodes and of Dynamite and scenes and things aired on TV that I guess weren't to Tony Khan's liking or may have been attributed to a drop in the ratings or whatever it was that Tony Khan didn't like, something happened and he was like, no, essentially, like, screw this, this is my company, I'm going to steer the ship, essentially. And apparently he's been doing that for the past year, and that was said to be another major thing that Cody was kind of hurt by. By one report, someone had actually stated, and I believe it was Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated. I hope I got that correct with my sources here, but I believe he was the one who had reported that it actually hurt him more than taking a loss in the ring when Tony Khan essentially took back the creative control and power that he had. And if that's the case, then I part of me can respect that, with him having that executive role. I would imagine that he would want some say and he would want some control, and especially with him specifically being one of the basically founding fathers of AEW, right? Like, he was the one who really steered the movement and the revolution, not to play on their words, but essentially the revolution that created AEW, that had all the momentum going into All Out, or All In rather. without All In, I truly don't think that there would have been an AEW, and I'm sure that was a big thing, and maybe a few other key factors that played into the decision making to actually start a company. But I think Cody rather should get credit for AEW. And there was another I'm not sure, I think it was just a tweet that I read, that there was something that Tony Khan had said in an interview in the past that was pretty much just insinuating that he was the one that created AEW and AEW was his brainchild or whatever to that effect. And that apparently was something that Cody Rhodes also kind of took offense to, and it kind of hurt him. And if that's the case, and all this is just speculation. I should clarify and emphasize as well. We don't know any of this, and everything that everyone is talking about right now is just pure speculation, even if it's reported that they have inside sources and stuff like that. Like, who truly knows what, you know what I mean? So just to kind of put that back out there and just, like I said, emphasize that we all are just speculating at this point. But that's what's fun about wrestling too, like the whole speculation part, and partly why we all listen to podcasts too, right? Because we're all strangely and oddly obsessed with all this shit that goes on. But with that being said, I do want to kind of actually go back and state specifically what AEW's official Twitter account released regarding Cody and Brandi Rhodes. And I'm going to pull that up here now, and it was specifically from Tony Khan himself. However, I did go back to see if he posted it on his personal Twitter account. I didn't see it specifically. I could have missed it because he had posted a few things since then, so I'll go back and double check, but this was directly from the AEW handle itself on Twitter. And it says, Cody and Brandi Rhodes were integral to the launch of All Elite Wrestling. Cody's ability combined with his boldness and his passion for our industry and his love for community outreach helped AEW deliver on our mission to give fans what they needed for far too long, something new, innovative, and lasting. Brandy helped us shape the AEW story, and I appreciate how hard she fought for us both in the ring and out of the ring, competing in the women's division while advancing our efforts at inclusion and civic causes, including great partnerships with Culture City and the American Heart Association. I have immense respect and appreciation for Cody and Brandy, and I wish them both the best as they move on from AEW. Thank you, Cody and Brandy. And it's signed Tony Khan, CEO, President, General Manager, and Head of Creative, All Elite Wrestling. And it just kind of tickles me that everything that he has listed out there. Hey, if you do everything, you want it known, and I do not blame him at all. It is what it is. Say what you want, and like I stated, the idea of the wrestlers doing and creating a company on their own. One of the mottos going into it was it's by the wrestlers for the wrestlers and stuff like that, So that was the whole concept, and I can understand maybe why that would have hurt Cody's feelings a bit, but I don't know, who's to say how someone else should feel, just because you don't feel one way doesn't mean that the next person should or shouldn't feel the same way. But I find it very interesting that this could be a main factor of him leaving, and him not re-signing a new deal with AEW. And I guess I should say here, now going forward in this episode, I'm just going to speak and act like it's a for sure thing that he's going to WWE, because pretty much everything that I've read and everyone who does anything in the wrestling world is reporting and stating that it's almost like a for sure thing that he's going to WWE. In Wade Keller in particular, who I'm going to reference here, he had, I believe, dropped an audio show at some point today, maybe earlier this afternoon, and he covered a lot of information, so I'm going to read what he wrote, or what he had stated rather, on his show. And this is going to be a lot of information, just a heads up and a forewarning, but the reason I'm reading his particular, I guess, quote and report rather is because it covers a lot of information that I think everyone is kind of wondering, regarding where he's going next, and what's the next step. And I know for the majority of you guys that is whether Roads to the Top is going to continue for season 2 on TNT, but unfortunately we don't think that's a for sure thing, and we don't think that's happening. In all fairness though, the show wasn't horrible, and I thought it was pretty interesting to see. For me, I just think it's cool to see like how wrestlers live, and not even just wrestlers, but just celebrities. I hate that term, but celebrities for just for the situation, how they live, right? Like you imagine they make a decent amount of money, so it's just cool to see how lavish they are, because you see like people like the Miz and Maurice, who love that type of lifestyle, and that's cool. You make your money, you deserve to live how you want, and not knocking anyone. But for me, like I just find it fascinating to see like what type of like actual human beings they are. So but anyway, I'm like I said, I'm gonna reference what Wade pretty much covered in apparently his audio show, and I appreciate the transcription from Wrestle Talk here. So Wade Keller, like I said, pretty much addressed the reaction from WWE on the inside and the mindset going forward, and what they hope. And Wade starts off by saying, I've been on the phone all morning, all afternoon, nonstop with people in AEW, texting people about the news on Cody Rhodes, which you've most likely heard about Cody gone from AEW and heading to WWE. Cody and WWE haven't confirmed it, but Cody is going to WWE and he's going to get a big push. Vince McMahon is going to treat this as a big deal. Everybody I talk to thinks Vince loves the idea of acquiring a co-founder and EVP and, main event wrestler. He just held their secondary title, singles title, not that long ago, and having him show up on WWE TV is something that Vince is very interested in and taking advantage of making money on it. It could even be a situation where Cody is in a major match at Wrestlemania. Pause for a second. Just imagine that, guys. Imagine that. And full disclosure, I've shitted on this year's WrestleMania already. Like, I've told friends, like, I'm most likely not going this year and not going this year. And I may have even said it on here in regards to, like, the Charlotte and Ronda match that's been booked for WrestleMania now. Just not feeling it this year, like, it's just a weird vibe. But to think that, and that was just a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And to think that Cody Rhodes could be at WrestleMania this year is just, what the fuck? Like, I personally thought Cody Rhodes was going to be an AEW lifer for, just gonna say all the obvious reasons. I'm not gonna get into them all, because you guys know, if you're listening to this, you guys are smart, right? You're not dumb. You know the obvious reasons. Cody was essentially one of the founding fathers for AEW. He did so much for it. So to think that, first, that he's gone, and second, to think that he could be back at WrestleMania, which is 2 months away, 2 months and some change away, maybe 2 months. I don't know the exact date, but to think that he could be there. And just a couple weeks ago, he was on AEW in a kick-ass ladder match. And by the way, we all should go back, and I just thought about it now, rewatch I guess it's the last promo that he did to hype the ladder match against Sammy Guevara, and pretty much like pick apart his promo. Like I may do that. Full disclosure, timing wise, AEW is about to start here when I'm recording this, so I may do this a little bit later after the show. But I'm very intrigued now to go back and re-listen to that interview or that promo that he cut, addressing not being happy with the contract that was offered to him. You remember there's a specific line, I don't remember word for word, but he had referenced receiving a contract in the mail and it wasn't the one that he expected or that he had wanted, and did that little smirk. So, and he was wearing that brown suit. That also stands out to me. But I'm very, very interested in going back and re-listening to that and kind of putting some of the pieces together at this point to see what kind of picture we may get. But just an interesting side note and something that stood out to me. But gonna get back to Wade's quote here. So he stated, I literally had 4+ hours of conversations before recording this with people, and I'm sure there's more that I'll get into coming days on different podcasts about the situation with Cody, but I fully expect Cody to be on WrestleMania either as a wrestler or making his first appearance. Whew. I don't know if they can hold back putting him on TV, so I could even see him appearing on Raw or SmackDown next week. What the fuck? I'm not aware of there being any kind of non-compete at this point since he's been a free agent for a while, so Cody could appear. I wouldn't be shocked if there's even some augmentation to the booking plans for Wrestlemania, perhaps related to the Elimination Chamber, in order to set the stage for Cody to do something really big at Wrestlemania. He continues that. Whew, gosh, guys, it's just crazy. But Wade continues with saying, I think Cody will get a big push, at least at first. You know, there's different opinions on whether Vince is going to resent Cody for creating competition or admire Cody for his entrepreneurial spirit and being classy about it the whole way. You know, Paul Heyman, Eric Bischoff, Jeff Jarrett, they all competed with Vince and they all got jobs again. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Vince saw Cody as a mid-carder. He saw Christian as a mid-carder. Christian went to Impact Wrestling and won a world title. He came back, he got a better push, but it wasn't at the level of an Edge, which is what, you know, what Christian always wanted. He wanted to be at the Edge level. End quote. And guys, like, I get the comparison with Cody and Christian, but to me, for whatever reason, and I could be off with this, and by the way, let me know what you guys are thinking about all this crazy shit on Twitter at ASHMANNS and on the pod's Twitter page at kickashpodcast_. But this is just, to me, a little different than a Christian comparison. And like I said, I could be wrong, but to me, I think with what Cody has done with himself, even before AEW, going on the indie scene and really establishing himself and rebuilding himself and as a main eventer, I think, and of course that obviously carried over to AEW and it was amplified there, but between that and the role that he had in building AEW as a company, you know, like I said, say what you want, but he definitely had a major part in it. And behind the scenes and the community outreach and his look, right? Like, he's always in a suit. He looks the executive and big shot vibe, right? He fits that role. You know, a lot of people may not like this, but he looks like a WWE superstar. He looks like a big deal. He carries himself as a big deal. He has the fucking bus, guys. Like, he's already there. He fits that role to a T. And when he first left WWE, it was because he, like Wade mentioned, he was viewed as a mid-carder. And he was Stardust, right? Like, say what you want about Stardust, but every role that they gave him and every character, he had a way of making it work. And it may not have been, obviously, a main event thing or a serious act regarding Stardust, but he made it work. And it was still, you weren't, like, changing the channel during his spot or going to the bathroom or anything like that. Like, it may not have been your favorite part of the show, but it was still a good part of the show. So he took that and he literally took the ball and ran with it. If it's amazing to think back on the wrestler and character and person he was in WWE to the individual he is now. And I totally agree with Wade and the vibe and the speculation of that's going on backstage, that if he were to be brought in, and it again appears that he is, I think he's going to be a big star. I think Vince is going to respect the hell out of what he did. I don't view really anything that Cody did as something that Vince would hold a grudge against. I think he's going to be all for it. I think there's probably going to be some jokes and some jabs, you know, but I don't think that it's going to hinder him. If anything, I think it did everything that he wanted it to do. I think that I'm not going to say necessarily had the specific route planned, but I think maybe in the back of his mind, he always knew he would end up back at WWE someday. You know, maybe not this soon, but I think he always had that feeling. And like I said, like, to me, Cody Rhodes just looks like a perfect WWE superstar, you know, and especially with the way AEW itself has changed lately with all the new acquisitions and just the different kind of approach that and style that AEW has. Like, Cody really doesn't fit in, you know, and it's not how it was when it first started. And don't get me wrong, I still love it. Obviously, I'm still a huge, massive fan, and I'm not saying it's a bad route or something that, you know, that they're doing wrong, but maybe it's just not the direction that Cody envisioned and Cody wanted, and maybe he felt that he didn't fit in, and that was another reason too why he wanted to leave. Again, we're all speculating on someone's feelings, you know? We're never going to get them right, but it is very interesting to know, and yeah, the money thing is probably a key factor as well, but to me, if it was just a money thing, I think it would have been met. I think if it was Cody just asking, unless it was something crazy, right? Like 5 million a year or whatever, I unless it was something that was completely outside of the range, then I think Tony may have caved, but I don't know, like we nobody knows the amount. And with that being said, there have been a lot of guys who have just come in, like your CM Punks, your Bryan Danielsons, your Adam Coles, your Keith Lees now, who, and next few weeks, a month from now, where everyone's expecting Jeff Hardy to come back, or to debut rather in AEW. So there's a lot of guys coming in, and talent, I should say, coming in, and there's only so much space, like we all say, and this is now a massive spot that's gonna need to be filled on TV. He may not have been on TV weekly lately or a big part, but it's still to me a big blow, and it's shocking and it's sad and all that. But getting back to the WWE route and just imagining him back in WWE, I think, and you guys may think I'm crazy, but to me, one of the first things that I thought of was, and depending on when you debut him, I think first of all is a big thing. If you do it before WrestleMania, that is gonna. I think that's risky. I think you can debut him before WrestleMania, but I don't think you put him in a story to leading to WrestleMania. And I could be wrong, and I really haven't put much thought into him actually wrestling at WrestleMania because I didn't really think that would even be a thing. But to me, I think what would be a fun story in coming out of WrestleMania and a big feud that could lead to a SummerSlam type thing would be a Bloodline versus Royal Family story, right? And again, too, it's going to be interesting to see what carries over with the Cody character to WWE. Whether it's like, of course, it's not going to be the entrance of him, the Cody Vader, I think is what it was called. But just the music and the look and the feel and the pomp and circumstance of Cody, right? Like his whole entrance. So that's going to be interesting to see how that transfers over to WWE world. But I love, in thinking about it now, like it's so fun to see how many different things you can really slide in there. The opening statement in his entrance theme is wrestling has more than one royal family. And we all just, of course, thought it was a direct shot at the McMahon family, and I'm sure that was the mindset going behind it, but that can apply to so many different families. And I think what better family to throw that to and stick that to and use as a story than with the Bloodline family, the Samoan family. It's literally staring us right in the face if and when Cody comes in. I think if you're going to have a caliber and someone like Cody come to WWE, you have to start him off hot. Now, I'm not going to get into saying, oh, Cody should be the guy to end Roman's streak, which to think that could even be a possibility in a match is insane and bonkers. But we'll get into that specifically, what feuds he could get into once he actually does debut. But just right now, thinking of the first thing that came to mind was the Bloodline, like I said, and having him go face to face with Roman Reigns. And I don't know whether you would want to have his first match go directly against Roman, or maybe have him go through the Bloodline. And that's the thing too, is Cody going to come in as a face or a heel in WWE? To me, I think he would be embraced and loved, and it would be a huge deal, right? So I see the WWE fans really embracing him. But on the flip side, just think of when Cody does go back to WWE at this point, and let's say it's for a 3-year deal, right? Whatever the money is. Let's just say he signs on for 3 years, which is insane to think about, but let's just go with that. Think of what happens at the end of that 3-year deal and when that contract expires. If he were to go back to AEW, I would literally pay to see his reaction in the fans. The second he would come back, like, let's say his contract expires and a few weeks go by or whatever, and then the lights go out in AEW and all of a sudden Cody is just standing there. Like, I would love to see the response that the fans would give him. I would love to see whether they would just lose their shit in the most positive way for him, or lose their shit in hatred and anger towards him. I think the initial reaction may be like, oh shit, like, we're so happy to see you because we're a part of a cool moment. But then once they realize, like, oh shit, it's Cody, like, fuck you, guy, you know? Like, you left us, you literally went to our number one enemy, you know? Because that's how I'm not going to say a lot, but that's how some fans are. Like, you can only like one and it's us against them, you know? I would just love to see the reaction, but guys, I don't know about you guys, but I think I even went on record to say, like, Cody is like one of the last people that I would ever see leave AEW, and Brandy for that matter as well. But and I should adjust that too. I did read that there are no plans for Brandy to come in at this time with Cody. There is pretty much speculated that he is going to just come in by himself starting off, and to be honest, I think that's kind of, I would love to see him come in with Brandy. I think they could be a dominant power couple. Now, again, I think you do have to kind of contemplate as well if they're going to be faces or heels, and that could be a thing where maybe they're afraid that Brandy would get booed just based off the judgment of the AEW fans, right? Like, she was always getting booed since her return, so that could be a thing there too, but I don't know. Some people stated that when he went to Impact Wrestling, it was almost a built-in thing. Like, he wouldn't sign on unless Brandy was getting a contract as well. So I don't know if that's changed and if that's even true, but it's just a crazy 48 hours we've all lived in the wrestling world, guys. I don't know if the possibility of Cody, rather, I should say, let me back up before even getting into that. The fact that he could potentially even show up on SmackDown this week in 2 days is just mind-blowing. I was under the umbrella of Cody is never going to leave AEW. He's a lifer. He helped build the company. But thinking back on it now, it kind of is not surprising. He wanted to prove to WWE and himself and to everyone that he's a main event guy and he's a star, and he did that. He is a star. He is a main event guy. For the first year and a half, 2 years of AEW's life, he was a big part of it, and I don't think they would have gotten where they are without him, you know? And maybe that's a little heavy, and I think with the Star Powers first starting off with the name itself and the company itself and that press release that they did in Jacksonville and everything like that, I think that really added a lot of credibility, and of course Jericho as well, but we're just talking about Cody right now. But I don't know, guys, I think this is a major blow to AEW. I don't think this is necessarily a negative thing, and people should be saying, oh shit, like, you know, everyone's leaving, it's not as great as I thought, like everyone thought it is, and everyone says it is and all that, you know. There's no evidence that we should view this as anything like that. I just think it's really a personal thing, and I think for whatever reason, whether it was his feelings were hurt, you know, or with his role changing or whatever it was, you know, it just wasn't a good fit for him right now. Not to say he can never come back, I'm sure, but I think the statements that were released said a lot. And I don't know, guys, it's just, I'm going to not speculate until we know for sure, and I think with Cody being Cody, we will know the details at some point. It'll be interesting to see, like I said, if it's on a podcast like a Renee Paquette or obviously not Jericho anymore, but it'll be interesting to see where we hear from him at, how we hear from him, if we hear from him, you know. Maybe he doesn't say anything on this, but I don't know, with how media involved he was and how comfortable he is in interviews, I definitely see him addressing this at some point, and Brandy, for like I said, for that matter as well. But until then, guys, that's pretty much all the news and info we have on them right now. If anything else drops, I will definitely come back on here and we'll talk about it and ponder and everything like that. But who knows, with everything that's like I said coming out now, he could be on SmackDown this week, he could be on Raw next Monday, so What a crazy world we live in, guys. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's show, and let me know what you guys are thinking, and if I'm completely bonkers with the whole bloodline, royal family thing, him showing up at WrestleMania, what you guys think about everything. Let me know on Twitter at ASHMANNS and on the show's Twitter page at KickAshPodcast_. Have an awesome night, guys.